I've done this. Which one's the jump seat again?
Catch Me If You Can, directed and written by Steven Spielberg, is a film based on the true story of Frank Abagnale Jr., who successfully forged his way into millions by using fake checks and multiple identities, such as a professional pilot, doctor, and even legal prosecutor. The movie is an adaptation to the original 1980s book, and has received approval by Frank Abagnale Jr. himself.
Steven Spielberg went out of his way to stay very close to the story. He was very concerned that he not be criticized for saying things that happened that didn't happen.
Right. While Spielberg did make changes to the original tale, it brought the story with a new outlook. When looking into the adaptation, psychoanalysis, and formalism of the film, it brings a whole new understanding and different insight on a story already known. One major difference in the book and film is the use of point of view. Along with Frank's adventure, we get a view from the FBI agent Carl, that is on the hunt for him. As viewers, we see their cat and mouse relationship grow into friendship that we wouldn't have caught on had it been filmed with only one point of view.
You swear?
Carl also takes Frank out of the French prison, whereas in the book, Frank goes to Sweden and later the States. Carl also gives Frank the FBI job in the end.
You'd be placed in the custody of the FBI where you'd serve out the remainder of your sentence as an employee of the federal government.
Under whose custody?
But in reality, Frank worked several low-paying jobs before seeking to offer his services in the anti-fraud department. These aren't minor changes, so why would the real-life Frank agree to them? As George Bluestone mentions in Limits of the Novel and the Film, it all has to do with narrative change, which he feels are financially driven. A happy ending always receives better reception from the audience, especially when seeing two point of views interact up to that point. Also, it's a matter of sacrifice to get the message across. An interesting adaptation in the film is the relationship of Frank and his father.
Frank, wake up! Come on, let's go! Get up, come on, come on. Frank, wake up.
Dad.
Frank never saw his father after he ran away from home, but in the film, he returns to him. Also, Frank did have siblings, but in the film, he was an only child. Being the child of divorce, and choosing to live with his father, helped add on to the background of why Frank did what he did. The real-life Frank did grow a close relationship with his FBI agent. Frank also ran away from home, so another father figure was there, which brings us to the psychoanalysis side of the film. From early on, we see Frank's father influence on Frank's con abilities.
Dad, what's all this for?
You know why the Yankees always win, Frank?
Because they have Mickey Mantle?
No, it's because the other teams can't stop staring at those damn pinstripes. Watch this.
He feeds into Frank's subconscious to always aim higher and achieve the best in life. This later shows its effect on Frank, when he is put in a situation with a student at school, in which he turns and cons the classroom that he is the professor. He aims to be the bigger person, but in a way he was unconsciously taught. This of course, would then follow into his storyline much deeper, to even when his own father encourages to go forward.
It's over. I'm gonna stop now.
But they're never gonna catch you, Frank.
Frank being able to easily and confidently play the role of these many identities, is the byproduct of his unconsciousness. Looking into Sigmund Freud's structural model of the psyche, we have the id, superego, and ego. The id operates on the pleasure principle, which is the idea that every wishful impulse should be satisfied immediately, regardless of the consequences. Frank's id feeds off pleasing his father, and living up to what he was taught. This is where Carl comes in to help with his ego. The ego develops to mediate between the unrealistic id and the external real world. It is the decision-making component of personality. Ideally, the ego works by reason, whereas the id is chaotic and unreasonable. The superego incorporates the values and morals of society which are learned from one's parents and others. So while Frank learned it all from his father, that was rarely home, his new father figure is teaching him new morals. The connection Frank has with his father crumbles as he hears news about his death. This triggers him back and forth on what is his reality, compared to what he was trying to portray. If we looked into Joseph Campbell's The Hero with 1,000 Faces, this would be Frank's stage in facing one of many tests. Actually, each step would apply to Frank. Ordinary World is pre-con artist Frank. Call to adventure starts from his father. Refusal of the call comes at school, he is hesitant to con but eventually does. This follows up to the hunt for him, which meeting the mentor brings Carl. Crossing the threshold is the battle between getting caught. Tests, allies, enemies is when he returns to his father, as well as, when Carl captures him. Approach to the inmost cave is his time spent in prison. Ordeal is faced at his father's death. Reward is the job offer, which leads to the road back in completing the journey. Building off of the unconscious-conscious flow, the film's use of formalism is heavily centered around the sujet rather than fabula. More or so, the sujet leads up to the fabula, because Spielberg's use of close-up shots leave the mind having to fill in the gaps of what is going on. When it's not a close-up shot, it's a followed-to-stop shot. The camera follows along with the movement of the characters, and only stops once they do. This creates an engaging shot, almost as if you are there. The pan also allows for the environment and scene to be introduced. The same is done with use of feet shots. Another pan type is hiding the subject speaking when starting a scene. You are almost following the environment before you, looking for where the voice comes from to connect it to a face.
Pan Am, may I help you?
Hello, I'm calling about a uniform.
Hold for purchasing.
Thank you.
Purchasing.
To be a pilot?
I'm a co-pilot.
Why so nervous?
While not discussed, other viewpoints on the film, I think would be interesting to look into, are feminism and masculinity, especially because of son and father relationship, with addition to Frank's approach towards the females. Besides the great cinematography, the film truly stands well as its own. While it is supposed to be a novel-to-film type, it lives up to be more of a inspired by film. It takes a original story and makes it into an entirely new one. It's a great homage to the real Frank to have, as well as, an addition to Spielberg's line of work.